Welcome in, One Nation, to another episode of the Hive podcast. TJ Winger, joined by Athletics Director John Waters. John, thanks so much for taking the time to join me.
I appreciate you having me, TJ.
Absolutely. Well, this has been an exciting year, and we're also coming off a really exciting, year of Lynchburg athletics last year, and all condensed into the spring. Which, happy I wasn't here for that per se, because I'm sure that put the stressors at a high mark. But you talk about 8 conference titles, and a lot of that success is carried over into this season. I want to talk to you about that. We could talk a little bit about LHSN and kind of talk about what the future of Lynchburg athletics looks like. But let's start with kind of a GiveDay wrap-up. We had that event last week on Thursday. The university hit its goal for donations, lots of money received, and I know that was reciprocated on the athletic side.
Sure. I think that the best thing about GiveDay for us, and we talked a little bit about it going into it, but it's just that one day a year where we can really focus on our alumni and really help our current students understand how the different people that have come before them have really paved the way. So, a great day for us to kind of remember. And one of the cool things last week was that it was all intermixed with D3 week, which is a good week for us to focus on our student athletes. So, again, just a lot of moving parts to last week, but it was really a lot of fun.
Yeah, and it was cool. I even mentioned this to you, looking at some of the old pictures from 5, 10, 15 years ago through D3 week, and then talking about what the future holds with GiveDay initiatives. And some of the focuses for Lynchburg athletics was baseball, softball, continued facility renovations for those two sports, getting courts for tennis, and then equestrian, new homecoming this summer. Lots of exciting things on the horizon, and talking about those facility upgrades and whatnot. In your eyes, what are some of those big next steps for Lynchburg athletics?
Sure. I think that in the world of recruiting and 2021, 2022, whatever this new generation and everything else is, one of the cool things about the University of Lynchburg and really the history of Lynchburg college athletics is that we've had some really great teams. We've had amazing people come through. And in some regards, we've always kind of had a national presence. Part of what we did, I think during my first couple of years here, was really try to dig into it and understand, okay, where are we in the world of your specific sport? So kind of thinking sport by sport and looking nationally and trying to figure out what all the different pieces are. But if we make the right kind of investment and, number one, invest in the people so that we've got stability and leadership and equity in terms of working our different staffing levels along so that they're comparable with what their competitors are and all of the above.
Sure.
Then what can the upside be kind of sport by sport? So, again, part of the challenge for me coming in as an athletic director, and again, it seems like ancient history now, in my 8th year, but we really wanted to bring the sports that were not having as much success into a situation where they were competitive on a conference level. And so, you look at tennis and golf and some of the other sports that might not have had the level of care and attention that they could have over the past few years, or the time prior to my coming. Like, we've worked all of those in a really good direction, not only so that they're having success on the court, but so that there's a good vision for where we're headed facility-wise and all those different things. At the same time that you kind of bring that group up to speed, moving the group that's the competitive in the ODAC group up to a national level of competition.
Sure.
Which again, there are just so many great examples of that throughout the Lynchburg history. But our men's and women's basketball teams getting to a point where they're competitive on a yearly basis with the ODAC and regionally and all those other things. The history of Lynchburg athletics has not necessarily been that way. But to do all of that in a way that doesn't compromise the dynamic programs that are already at that national level. So, again, that's a long answer to some of what we're talking about. But, I think that really, when done correctly and consistently, we feel like Lynchburg is really a unique place in terms of the types of students we can attract and the way that we can help them focus athletically, academically, socially, every other way, and really put some successful teams together. And and make a high impact on each of our students' lives.
For sure. And I mean, realistically, in your job, that vision and the focus, it probably molds and shifts year to two at a time. So it's not really fair. If anything, that means I need to have you on next year and we can ask the same question.
Yeah.
We'll see and compare and contrast. But, talking about your job, and you have a ton on your plate, but amongst that, bringing in coaches. And I think that's such an interesting, part of just some of what you do. But you have some of the pre-existing coaches before you were hired. Hillary Scott's in his 14th year. Chris Yeager's been here forever. Dr. Todd Olson, a staple of that program. So talking about those coaches and then what was already here and that established focus with those programs, how has that maybe guided you in the process of hiring an Allison Nichols and bringing in a Philip Williamson, et cetera, to build up and, continue that type of mold but with those programs?
Great question. I think full-time, part-time grad assistants across the board, we have about 65 or 70 different people that work for us and work with us on a daily basis. So there are currently 7, I think is the number, of people that were here prior to my arriving.
Wow.
So, and really it's not, it's just one of those things where different situations have happened and people have, moved on or moved to other jobs or those types of things. So, I think it speaks really a lot to the character and to really the culture that small group, basically has built over time. So whether it's Kudelka or Enza or Dr. Olson, Yeager, Bruce Reed, Kelly Gunter, all of kind of that group. And I probably forgot somebody, Coach Simmons, Dawn.
Yep. That's
so really that dynamic group of people that, really impact students at a high level, but are incredibly competitive and, just tenacious in terms of how they do their business. It has been great because onboarding others that have similar focus has been really simple because basically you try to, identify some of those characteristics. I think the cool thing for us is that as we've retooled, and I talk a lot with students and I know I always have a privilege to talk to Dr. Pat Aronson's students that are athletic training students that are entering the work world. So we do mock interviews. So I always talk about our support group, support staff in the athletic department. And really that support staff is our athletic training group, sports information, digital media, strength and conditioning, and myself and Kelly.
Sure.
And there's sometimes that we've got to be the glue and we got to really just try to keep this thing together. Sometimes we've got to be the grease overall, but most of the time we really have to be the gears. And so the coaches do dynamic things with each of their individual programs and, really spread their impact in the community and broadly overall. But we're really that support group that have to pull things together and try to drive things forward in a positive way. And so when we're successful at doing that, it puts the coaches in a great spot. So it's been a lot of fun. It's certainly a challenge, and certainly a challenge. I think most people, when they look at collegiate athletics overall, sometimes the easiest jump is from not being good to being competitive. Like that's the easy jump.
Sure.
The most dynamic, most difficult jump is from being really good to going to that next level of excellence. And so, that's where we've tried to really take some of those steps from a facility standpoint, from a, telling our story standpoint and all the rest of those things. And it's invigorating but challenging.
Well, yeah, and even talking about being seen on those national scales, that kind of coincides with what I started to talk about at the very start of this podcast. 8 conference titles last year, and that has carried over into this season. And you're looking at men's soccer national or ODAC championship. What an awesome atmosphere that was here, taking on Randolph. You have women's soccer getting into the NCAA tournament. Field hockey gets an at-large bid. Then you move forward and you have cross country. Both men's and women's win the conference, and indoor track and field. Both take home conference titles, and that track and field program is on a dominant stretch. Historically. Right. So, talk to me about what put in a lot of work, but get the chance to see some of it kind of come to fruition and be compared to on that national scale. Because even some sports I didn't mention, baseball, top 5 team in the country, lacrosse, top 15 group, depending on what poll you look at. So even if it's not necessarily conference titles yet, because we're still in the spring, it's being seen on a national scale because that's where the teams are playing at.
Yeah. Again, I think that our ability to attract high-level student athletes, but also to develop students, taking them from wherever they are and moving them forward, I think that has served us incredibly well. We talk a little bit, not a lot externally, even though I'll say it out loud, but I think it's incredibly reasonable to think that we could have 13 different sports each year that are represented in the NCAAs overall. So when you look at men's and women's track and field, cross country, that's 6. So, with the other 3 seasons, fall, winter, and spring, getting 2 or 3 of some of those, I think that's a very realistic goal for us, across the board. And sometimes it's not the entire team. It may just be individuals within that team. But,
Sure.
So many of our coaches are, recruiting and bringing in high-level students. And then as they roll off and graduate and do other things, then, are able to continue to attract high-level students. So I think that ultimately, with all the facilities in place, everything else, I feel like we've got the opportunity to be a top 25 perennial top 25 program in the country in terms of overall athletics. I have not gone through to look at what the Division I list of 1 through 25 or 1 through 50 is, but I would dare to say that there are not a lot of schools that people are really familiar with that are all the time in that list. Mm-hmm. So again, putting our students in a great spot to create these memories and experiences, I think that served us well. I think, you talked a little bit about GiveDay and what are the fun pieces of GiveDay. Seeing people give back in some small way and just reaching out to the coaches on that day and saying, hey, coach, thank you for everything. Right. Put this $50 to good use, or something like that. I think that's really a powerful piece.
Oh, without a doubt. And another part of highlighting, teams that compete on a national level, and this is obviously an area of interest of mine, but LHSN, because I can't go a game day without somebody telling me this is the best in the ODAC, or this is the best in the region, this is the best in Division III, and I do this for a living, and I can compare and contrast, and I feel like I have some weight and say on who has better where. LHSN is really comparable to high-level Division I athletic streams, those good mid-major and, on better than some Power 5 sites. And that's, not to throw shade at those places or anything like that, but it's interesting because you might look at University of Lynchburg and say, well, it's just a Division III school in the middle of the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Yeah.
Why here? So that begs the question, what sparked this idea and why here?
Yeah. That's a fun question to try to answer. So, I absolutely believe in the quality of our group. I think that if people understood the level of experiences that all of our students have, they would be blown away.
Sure.
That this is not, 10 professionals and degreed professionals with a lot of seasoning and experience and everything else, but really there's, a great group of leaders and a lot of students,
right.
Across the board. When I got here, obviously live streaming was not an unusual thing for Division III. The way that Lynchburg had attacked it before was with limited equipment and a couple of GAs that kind of did some things to actually provide the games, but with a very, very limited amount of on-air talent, in terms of doing commentary for games and that type of thing. So it's funny, Alicia Laporta is a Lynchburg alum who's a double grad, played women's soccer and was a GA for women's soccer. Just got a job at Cal Berkeley in the athletic department. And she's a really dynamic person. But when I got here, she was actually doing streaming as part of her GA job.
Wow.
Overall. And it was, quite an interesting dynamic. But, I feel like parents and families are investing their, 20-year savings or 18-year savings on their college students' experience. And for us to be in a position to tell that story in a really dynamic way and to help them see their students compete all the time, I think that's really important. There's some times that we wish we could do things, more at a higher level or more camera angles or different things or spread the games out more, all of those different things. But, I feel like we've really set the bar. I want the people in the ODAC to despise what we do. I want them to, aspire to be better. When somebody hires a new person in their department, I want them to hire them to say, I want you to do what Lynchburg does.
Right.
Overall. That we need to be the gold standard. I think that, the 2020s and beyond, this is the digital age. Mm-hmm. So how students connect, how students see themselves, how we amplify not only their brands, but, really what they've got going on. I think all those things are there. And I really think, you and Sam have done a tremendous job, and I'm guessing you were fishing for the compliment the whole time.
I'll take it, though.
We'll clip out that part. But, I think that what you guys have done has provided a level of stability that built on, this epic level of effort that Joe and, all the different people had put in kind of leading up to that. And so, as I said, I think about a different subject maybe last week. To me, this is that dynamic starting place that we can launch from. Mm-hmm. And I really don't think there are a lot of limitations. When you can have GiveDay and you can bring in well over $100,000 on a GiveDay and have more than 700 people give and all the rest of that, LHSN is built on the backs and the wallets and pocketbooks of our families and friends and everything else. Every single penny for the TriCasters and cameras and microphones and Nikon cameras and all the rest of it were from GiveDays.
Sure.
And so, the last 3 or 4 GiveDays, we've said, okay, hey, we need to raise $40,000 and, do these different things. So, hopefully our families feel like we've been good stewards. We're going to provide these dynamic opportunities for our students, but we're also going to tell everybody about it and not really make apologies about that. So,
well, I think there's a couple of interesting points because you're right. LHSN kind of stems from the stuff and the resources that comes from the school and parents, allowing their child to come here and things like that, but also GiveDay, those donations. It's a chance for LHSN to be able to supply that back in a tangible way. But then also not just hitting a bar, but being the bar. I think that's the mindset to have, and I think that's what excites me about LHSN. And I'll give you credit since you gave me a compliment. I'll give you one too. You are not far removed. If there's ever anything that goes wrong or needs to be taken care of, literally we were performing surgery here in this office on a broken 3-play. So So you're not far from this whole process. And part of why I wanted to ask is just because you look where it is now. And just compared to where I know it must have been, 8 some odd years ago, it's got to be a huge pat on your back there, but also just a really cool story to be able to tell over,
it's fun.
Whatever 6-8 year span now. So that's exciting. And, there's so much still to talk about. I'll have to have you back on another one of these podcasts. But, John, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. And, like I said, there's a whole lot more we could talk about. But I appreciate you taking the time. Any final thoughts before we close out the episode?
Not really. Just, I guess more than anything, really excited about where the spring is headed. Mm-hmm. We've got a lot of teams that are at, key moments of the year and highly competitive across the board. So looking forward to championship season as it arrives. And really sending this group of special seniors out in a dynamic way.
Yeah, and you know what? I'll tease this one out. I think for the final episode of this year, I think I'm going to go around and get superlatives. Best male athlete. Best game you saw at home this year. And I'm going to definitely have to get your opinion on those. Categories and whatnot. And we'll put that on here. So
I'll be very political on most of that.
Sounds good. I wouldn't expect anything else. John, thank you so much. That's going to do it for this episode of the Hive Podcast. Be sure to come back next week when we have a new episode for you. Till next time, we are signing off.